Here it comes.
Gabriel could elaborate a little bit. You said next year you'd be ready to go to clinical trials and delivering the treatment. Can you discuss that a little bit further?
So the normal pathway for developing any drug is to establish its credentials. It's whether it works against specific cancer cell collections in the lab. Then you test it in animal models. Then you do some fairly extensive preclinical toxicology studies to make sure that you don't do more harm than good. And then you take it to the first human clinical trial, which is usually a phase 1, sometimes a phase 0 clinical trial, in which you try to establish the dose that is safe and hopefully effective, but safety is the first concern. And once that is established, and that's what we hope we will get to sometime next year, then you broaden your clinical trials and try to define how effective it is, what type of patients benefit from it, what type of tumors it is effective against, and so on. So we are at that stage, at that bridge between the laboratory and the clinic right now, and we are poised to take it to the first clinical trial next year. No, we are not quite there. We need to cross a number of bridges before.
You know, this highlights something that's very much on everybody's minds these days, which is the cost, both in dollars and in time, of drug development. And the latest estimate that I've heard from pharma, and there are some people in the room who can correct me if I'm wrong, is that it can cost up to $4 billion to get one drug ultimately into patients approved and used. Part of that's because about 99% of all the compounds that start out as potentially drugs fail. And 99% from the beginning. Now, that's not what you see or we see in the clinic, because many of them appropriately are put to rest before they get to the clinic. But it raises the point that overall we're all working hard right now to figure out more efficient systems for identifying promising drugs and discarding less promising ones faster and earlier, so that we can focus on the more likely successes and reduce the cost. The other part of this, which is a very, very interesting challenge for all of us, is to start to talk about what constitutes better or effective. And there's been lots of argument about that. In fact, I might use this opportunity, because I hinted at this before, to put Kathy on the spot, because you lived through it as much as any of us with bevacizumab. And the question I'm asking is not the history of this, but rather the endpoints. What mattered here?
So I think this is actually something that we need to have a larger discussion, and if anything useful can come out of the difficulties we've had with the development of Avastin, it may be actually forcing us to have this difficult conversation. So particularly for women with metastatic breast cancer, that with our current therapies, it is not curable. What do you want a drug to do? Are you only interested in drugs that will cure that woman? Are you only interested in drugs that will help women on average live longer? Or are there other ways that drugs could provide benefit by significantly decreasing symptoms, providing the same benefit of currently available drugs but with fewer side effects, by finding better ways to deliver them to the tumor, or by keeping disease in remission for a longer period of time? And if those things that are short of survival are of value, how much better do they need to be? How much longer does it need to keep disease under control? How different should the side effects be? And at what cost? And that really is where we struggle. It is a crucial question for me and my colleagues when we're trying to design trials. Ultimately, if we're putting the time and effort and resources into doing a trial and asking our patients to vote with their lives and be part of that trial, we would like those therapies to be available to the other women who come after them, if indeed those therapies are effective. But right now, I'm not sure what I'm shooting for. So it's hard to design a trial and know that if this trial is successful, the drug will become available, because I'm not sure we have agreement on what is a success.
Gabe, you have a comment on this?
Yeah, what complicates matters even further is that what we see in the initial trials, the initial clinical trials, is just a very preliminary view, and we don't know exactly what role a specific drug will play in the overall management of a type of cancer until years, sometimes decades later. For instance, the first study of Herceptin that was published by my friend to my right showed an exciting but not terribly compelling response rate in, 13% of patients who seemed to benefit a little bit. And then years later, we did a randomized trial in which it prolonged survival by 5 months in metastatic breast cancer. But that was not the end of the story, because now we know that it can probably cure about 20 or 30% of patients with HER2-positive breast cancer. That's where the money is. Now, we didn't know that in the early 1990s, and we have no idea what Avastin is capable of in that setting, in the setting of combined modality therapy of primary breast cancer. And that takes years. And if we kill a good drug too early, I don't think we've done ourselves a favor. Right. If we extend the life of a not-so-good drug for too long, that's also a wasteful exercise. So this is a difficult situation, but we need to increasingly understand what predicts for overall benefit that is relevant and that is meaningful.
I mean, we can go on a long time about this. I'll simply say that this is actually the topic of a whole session at San Antonio next week, and it's increasingly getting the rigorous attention of other areas of science, and I think that's good.